Welcome, Jenna. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I found your story on today.com,
Mhm.
and what really jumped out at me was the headline that said you wanted a hysterectomy after being diagnosed with cervical cancer, abnormal cells, and you were told no.
Mhm.
And once again, this goes back to, when do you know your body better than a medical practitioner? How do you advocate for yourself? These are big, loaded questions for so many people watching right now that have been in similar positions. Um, let's start with your journey. You have been diagnosed with endometriosis, adenomyosis, also abnormal cells in stage 0 of cervical cancer. You have been through it, as so many of us can relate to. So please tell us a bit about your path.
Yeah, so I was having issues with endometriosis, which obviously we didn't know it was endometriosis since pretty much like I think like 6 months after I had my first period. Like they started getting very painful and the bleeding was getting really heavy. Um, it took me about 5 years like to get an actual like diagnosis. Up until then, I was put on like antidepressants. They thought I was depressed. They thought I was drug seeking. I think at one point they tried to put me in a psychiatric hospital. They were very adamant that nothing was wrong with me. They accused my mother of having Munchausen
Mhm.
um, by proxy. Um, so I mean, like we went really through it. I think I had 3 laparoscopic procedures. No one had found it. They could not figure out what's going on. And I finally found a doctor who I'm still with now, who like finally diagnosed me. Um, and it was really severe at that point. And so, yeah, it was just kind of, I mean, it was a journey in and of itself just to get a diagnosis, and then like a brand new journey after I finally got a diagnosis. Because even after that point, I wasn't taken seriously.
How
So
old were you when they were making the accusations that you were depressed, you were pill seeking? I mean, your mom was still your guardian, it seemed at the time, for them to label your mom as someone who also had some sort of mental illness.
yeah,
Just incredibly unfair
yeah,
and damaging.
it was really hard for me. I mean, for the first year, they probably like kind of took me. I mean, not really. They kind of took me seriously like in the first year of this journey, but it was more of like, well, you're a teenager. So I was like 13 at the time, and they were
Mhm.
like, well, like you're a teenager, so you're gonna have irregular periods. You're gonna have this. You're gonna have that, and so I don't think I got like the label of mentally ill until I was maybe almost 15 years old. And then at that point, I think it took about a year after that. I had gone to my mom and said, I don't want to live anymore. Like, I am losing my mind. I feel like I'm crazy. I feel like they're all right. Like, I'm just crazy. It's me. And I was in trauma therapy actually 2 days a week for over a year, like to try to cope with like the amount like of like gaslighting that had happened like from doctors. So I think
There
it was
was
probably like 14, like 15, like was when it got really.
was there any accountability when you finally did get a diagnosis, to call those doctors who put you pretty much into trauma therapy to say, hey, you were wrong. I knew something was not working in my body, that I have an illness, and you're so dangerous to be putting on these mislabels onto developmental minds.
Yeah, I actually had wrote like a letter like to the hospital when I was 16. And I don't know if anything ever came of it. I hope it did, but I'd like to think it did. I'm not sure though. And I just kind of went on a very long rant essentially of just kind of how important it is that like you are treating like women like with dignity, like and you like are listening like to them, because I could
Mhm.
have my my story could have ended very differently, like
Mhm.
um I could have like taken my own life. I could have like gone down a very dark path, and like thank God I did not. But like so
Mhm.
I wrote a very, I think it was like a 5-page essay essentially, like to the hospital, and I hope that there is accountability. But the fact that things don't really seem to have changed, I feel like probably not. But I would have had to go back and talk to every ER doctor,
Hmm.
I had seen a ton of gynecologists, a ton of endocrinologists. I mean, I had gone to every doctor that you could probably imagine. So it would have been a very like long like accountability tour if I would have done that.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's
route.
very, very sad because as we know, there are people who have different endings,
Mhm.
where if they've had suicidal ideation, depression, even for your mom, like the sympathy I feel for, or empathy I feel for her, going through that as a mom who's advocating for her daughter's health and wanting her daughter to feel better, and then to just be slapped with something like that. There was just a very big case that was settled, because they diagnosed a mom.
They
Yeah.
said, mhm.
And the mom took her own life. And it's there's so much responsibility that the healthcare system has toward the patient, and it should be patient first. And that is why it is so powerful of people like you taking the time and to be that vulnerable and say, this is what I went through, and I want to spare someone from ever going through this. But I also want to educate the medical population to remember that behind, the name of the patient is a full person with a full life who does not want to be sick. So let's go to you finally get a diagnosis of endometriosis, then you're diagnosed with adenomyosis. At what point were you like, I'm like done with this. I've had my, family. I'm just ready to be, put the door behind me with concerns about cervical cancer appearing or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, so I also had like fibroids, like in a
Mhm.
like ovarian cysts very frequently. So I think it was actually to the point where I was getting ovarian cysts like multiple at a time, like very large ovarian cysts. And at that point, I was also getting operated on every year, like because of my endometriosis, because it just kept coming back. And that was like the only thing that really like helped, even in like it was only a short period of time where I was relieved. But yeah, I think I was ready after my third miscarriage. So like that kind of tipped. Like honestly, I never thought like that I would get to the point where I would want a hysterectomy. I kind of assumed that I would have to have one, and that would kind of be like how it happened. But I think I just woke up one day. Like honestly, all these things just kind of added up. And I had had miscarriages. I was having these operations every year. They were getting harder to recover from. They weren't helping as much. And I honestly just woke up one day and I was like, I'm done. Like it really was an overnight thing. I never thought I'd get to that point, and like it really was just like an instant thing for me. Just kind of
And
clicked.
and when you had that moment of like, I'm ready, when you went to your doctor, what was the reaction?
So my primary like OBGYN was on board with it. He had been with me like since like my diagnosis, and he's fantastic. I mean, honestly, like I give him all the credit like in the world like that I have like made it to this point. Because I always felt heard, and he was like, okay, we're gonna send you to like a minimally invasive um like specialist, because I want this like to be the last time you were ever on the table. Like so like they're gonna go and get it all out. You'll never have to, you know.
Mhm.
And so I was like, great, this is fantastic. He's like, I'm gonna talk to her, like, I'm gonna tell her about your case. And um I think I went not even a month after that to the other doctor. And I had walked in with the impression, well, this is just like a consult, like before, the surgery. And she walked in and was completely just not on the same page as me. She was like, no, I was thinking more of like, I am really good at the job I do. And um we can um we could do like ablation, and we could do this, and
Ooh,
we can give you all the things. And I
elation right there. You just like,
yeah, like
that's a lot.
I would just love like to see you have like one or two like more kids, like because obviously like you wanted them because you had miscarriages. So like obviously like you were trying to have another kid. And like that was very like weaponized against me, like the fact that I had obviously been trying to have kids and we couldn't. And like and she was like, so I just think that you're going to regret it, and I just don't want to do that. And I was so shocked. I didn't even have words, and I walked out of there, and it didn't feel right. Um, but I was kind of like, I don't really think I'm out of options at this point. Like I was having such heavy periods. I had a bag that I would have to take to work with me that had a heating pad, like medication in it, spare underwear, spare pants, like just like my endo bag is what I called it. I had to take it to work with me every day. Um, I have a kid, so I was like, I can't take care of him. So I kind of like felt like I was at her will essentially. Like she wasn't going to do the hysterectomy, but she was offering me another surgery. So I
Mhm.
just took it, and
Oh,
that was kind of how it went. Like now I kind of wish that I like would have pushed back a little bit, but I didn't even know how to with that. I was so shocked. Like I had such a
yeah.
mixture of emotions of kind of like, you know, I felt very unheard. And then just kind of like I was backed into a corner. I was stuck. I was like, I don't think I'm ever getting that hysterectomy.
Mhm. And then you went through that surgery that clearly did not bring you relief.
Yeah.
So when did you say, okay, enough is enough. I make my own rules. I'm going to pursue getting the hysterectomy on my own terms.
Actually, probably less than a month after I had that done, because that so after I had so she this doctor like who performed it, she apparently is against um prescribing painkillers like
Mhm.
after, and I had to have like a fallopian tube taken out like in the surgery, and I had like extensive work done to get to fix the endometriosis and like the damage it had done. And I didn't have like any painkillers except for like Tylenol, like that she had sent me home on, and it was miserable. I had all these complications, and it was like less than a month after that I was kind of like slowly like getting back to like my baseline, and I was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I like had reached out like to like a colleague of mine, and he like is very well connected and like got me another like appointment with a different doctor.
Mhm.
Um, and I was able to move like on that pretty
Wow.
quick. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I like honestly, like it was almost immediately. Like I think like after that, I was like, I can't do this again. Like I can never like be on this table again for this procedure. Like I can't. So
When you spoke to that doctor who was willing to do the surgery for you, were they just baffled by what happened? Were they, I mean, they had to be upset to see, you know, such a recent surgery being done and really no relief and your wishes not being respected.
yeah, I mean, I was kind of, I mean, this like I don't want to say that I was fortunate because of the amount of complications I had, but in a sense I was, because it was all on paper. I had like multiple like ER trips after like the surgery, and like a ton of like messaging with my doctor. Um and so he kind of like had looked at all of that. And then like I was right in front of him in his office, and I still had an open incision that hadn't healed properly, like from the surgery. It was still like infected and not looking great. And I was crying. So he was so, I mean, he was fantastic. I actually talked to him earlier today for a follow up, and he's still fantastic. And he was so like empathetic as to what I had gone through, and I could tell that he felt really awful that that was my experience. And he was just kind of like, I will do anything that you want me to do. Like just you just tell me like
Mhm.
what you want. And I was so relieved in that moment, like, so he was fantastic.
Now you've had the surgery, right?
Yeah,
How
about
do
a
you feel? How do you feel now?
I have not felt like this. I mean, like I have like some like aches and pains still. I had like a lot of like nerve damage from my endometriosis, but overall, I have not felt like this pain free in a very long time. So um, it was definitely the right call. I feel fantastic. Like even emotionally, it's still kind of hard because I'm 29, and you
Mhm.
didn't want to have a hysterectomy at 29, but um, I feel so much better, and I know 100% that it was the right call. And
Right.
that's so comforting, to have
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, and this is totally your choice and what you wanted. And again, you have or you had adenomyosis, which, a hysterectomy is a cure for that. We know that a hysterectomy is not a cure for endo, but everyone has different kinds of involvement and everyone gets different kinds of relief. So I think it's very individualized. For people watching right now who might be encountering the same obstacles or similar obstacles to what you did, what do you say to them? How do they get to that point where they can advocate. Because I have always said this, like we champion the idea of be a self-advocate, be a self-advocate. But, you know, even for myself, when I sit in an office, there are moments where those stings that come from prior appointments where someone doesn't believe you or chalks it up to a flu, or you feel like you're being judged, that you almost minimize what you're going through because you're so afraid of being like, I don't want them to think I'm crazy. And you can have a clear diagnosis and a track record of
Everything that you,
hospitalizations and surgeries and, you know, and an actual diagnostic code and the whole thing, and still be like, well, what if they don't believe me? Like I had at one point, not too long ago, maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago, where I gave all my OR reports to a doctor, and he wasn't a endosurgeon, nothing like that. It was like a normal doctor. And he said, I just don't think you have endometriosis. I'm like, it's on
wow.
all my medical reports. So you're telling me I had like emergency, like surgeries for no
It has
reason?
the pathology report, like the
Right.
pathology says.
Right. I mean, it's all there. And yet I was like, he didn't read my paper. Like he didn't.
Yeah.
And then finally I got down to it. I was like, did you actually read my paperwork? He goes, well, I just got a little while ago. And I was just like, oh my God. So, so I do think there's those things that still stay with you. So what would you say to someone who's sitting there going like, I'm talking to someone who doesn't believe me. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. Like, how do they handle this?
Yeah, I always tell people I don't have like I am not afraid like of finding out that something is wrong with me, because like I've gotten to this point in my life and I'll figure it out. I always have figured it out. But when I think about having like to go and see a doctor, even if it's one that I've seen before, I'm terrified. Like that's where like my palms will sweat. I don't want to go to the appointment. I'll even like consider canceling the. I have canceled appointments before, and I will put them off for so long, because I have such PTSD because of that. Like I am terrified of what they're going to say. But one thing that I always like try to fall back on is the fact that I have never gotten it wrong in my life. And like I've proven that over and over again, like that I know my body, and it's okay if there are some days that I'm not like, because there were a lot of people who were kind of like, well, I would have done this and I would have done this, and I don't like to say that, because there are some days that maybe I would have done that, and other days like I wasn't as strong, and
Yeah.
like that's okay. And it's gonna ebb and flow, and it's peaks and valleys, and that's totally fine. But like at the end of the day, um, you know your body so much better than anybody else, and don't ever let anybody tell you that you don't. And that's probably like the best piece of advice that I can give anybody is it's okay if you don't have it all together every day, but just make sure that you keep in mind that like it doesn't matter where they went to school, what their degree is in, you still know yourself so much better than they will ever know you. And if they aren't helping you, that's their job, then go to somebody else and
Mhm.
keep pushing. Every time like that I almost like gave up, I somehow like would keep going, and like and something good would happen. And that's what I always tell people, like just keep pushing.
Yeah. And you'll get the answers. That's excellent advice. And I think it applies in the path for your health. I mean, it goes back to, you know you better than anyone else. And I love that you said it doesn't matter where their degrees are from or how long they've been doing it or whatever. It's what you feel. And if you know that something is wrong with you and it needs to be fixed, then don't feel you're not like married to your doctor. So you can go and find another one.
And I always tell people too, like you can fire your doctor at any point in time. Like
Mm,
they are not your boss. I know it feels like that sometimes. It really does. Like you feel that like
yes.
but they're not. Like you can walk away at any time. Like you are in charge of your care. And if you don't like that care, like
Mhm.
it's completely within your rights to get new care. And I think people really they forget that a lot. And I did too. But um yeah, that's probably the best thing that I can say to anybody. And I wish that I had like more like concrete advice, like do X, Y, and Z. I wish it was so easy and we could do it that way. And unfortunately it's not. But like
No, but I love what you just said. It's like you can fire your doctor at any time. Like you're the CEO
of
of
your
your
body.
own enterprise in your body. So if
You
you're
can
just like,
walk
I
out.
do not like how this employee that I've trusted is handling this corporation,
Yeah. Walk out, get up and walk
Yeah.
out. It's totally fine. Like get out and
Yeah.
just get up and leave. And like when I was a teenager, we didn't talk about endometriosis. Like when I first started having these issues, we did not talk about it. And I didn't have any doctors talking to me about it either. So like I kind of had to go out on my own, like and figure it out. And I actually when I was like maybe 15, I would like go like onto YouTube and I would search endometriosis. And there was like a video like of Susan Sarandon
Oh,
from
yeah.
the
Mhm.
Blossom Ball years ago. And she had said like it is not a woman's lot to suffer. And I have carried that with me throughout. I mean, like that is all that I had about endometriosis. Like that was where like I went to get all of my information was the Endometriosis Foundation of America. And just hearing her like in those words, that is something that I have carried with me throughout my entire uh, journey with endometriosis. And so I tell like a lot of women, it is not our lot to suffer, and there will be a lot of people who like will make you feel like it is, and
Mhm.
that's just like, doing a huge disservice to yourself and to all the other women. So like it is not like your job to be in pain all the time. It is not your job to pretend like it's not that bad. And like, so stop being like so nice and stop being so, courteous to everybody else and just like really hold like all the space that you need like for the pain that you are going through. And that's what I also tell women that all the time. Like it's not going to fix anything, but
Yeah.
like
But
accept it and hold space for it.
thank you. Thank you so much for your piece, and people can read it on today.com, and for being a shining light for so many who might be feeling really lost right now and feeling like they're alone in it. And we know that advocacy and talking about things, it not only behooves the patient, but it behooves the medical community so that they can understand and empathize and have more compassion for those that have endometriosis.
Yeah, I really hope that if there's ever like a doctor who watches this, that they just really understand how important their role is, because like the majority like of women have like an understanding that I'm never going to be cured, but
Mhm.
like they have like the ability to completely like shift our entire experience with endometriosis. Like they can't cure it. I understand that. And we're probably a ways off from that, but like they can really like shape the entire experience, like for women. Like it's a huge honor, I think, and responsibility of theirs. And like I really hope that they keep that in mind every time they encounter like a woman with endometriosis, whether it's in an ER or a doctor's office.
Thank you.
I really hope they consider that.